Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're out here with some of our plants. It's been real scorching hot, and oddly enough, we're approaching the end of our growing season, so some of our flowers are starting to wilt. But what I wanted to talk about today is starting a new garden bed, but in the ground. So we've talked before about building raised beds and how to do that. But what if you want to build them into the ground? Okay, you can do that. You can dig out a place and build a garden bed in the ground. The thing is, you don't just want to start planting right in your grass, because grass is tenacious, especially if you have a type of grass that's not native to your area. If your lawn was like basically seeded, it's going to be tenacious and difficult to remove if all you do is plant your plants right in the ground. So don't do that. You want to lay out and clear a site. So before you do anything, you want to lay out a zone on your grass. Like you could do it over there, you could do it over here, it doesn't matter. But you can lay out basically a pattern for your garden bed. Maybe you just want straight edges, like a square, and that's fine. We have all these 2x4s laying around here. If I need to define a square or rectangular area, an area with long straight sides, I can just use these 2x4s because they're just sitting here. But what if you want something a little more attractive, a little less straight? Well, in that case, you might want to have a curved garden bed, something with undulating lines. In that case, I would use a garden hose. Because you can see our garden hose being used right now, so you might hear water running. But our garden hose is curved nicely. It's just laying here. It's not actually, I'm not putting a garden bed here. It just happens to be laying here. But garden hoses curve really nicely, so it's actually not at all difficult to take a garden hose and use it to define the edges of your planting area. So absolutely you can use a garden hose to define the outside area of your garden. So let's just pretend this is our garden. And a garden hose works perfectly. Yeah, you can use things like powder, like DE or diatomaceous or something like that. Some people like to use spray paint, things like that. I don't like doing that. A garden hose is so easy because you can just lay out your garden hose to decide that is your pattern and then just cut it out. On to the cutting it out. So you have to remove the vegetation that is currently growing inside the perimeter of your garden bed, okay? This is usually going to be your lawn or grass and weeds and that kind of stuff. Now, you can dig or till or whatever, rip up the ground until the grasses and the weeds are kind of tilled under. But grass and weeds spread by creeping roots. So when you do that, you're going to end up with a lot of grass and weeds just growing in your garden bed. It's really annoying. So, what do I recommend? I actually recommend, you're going to have to put some effort into it. But if you look here, we have a box shovel. That's the back of it. Let's just flip it over. That's the front of it. So it's literally like a little box. Okay, it's literally like this little box. And what it does is it has a nice cutting edge. And you can put that into the ground, step on the back of it, and it cuts really nice and clean. And it does nice clean edges if you are doing a square or rectangular garden bed. So you can use that to really cut into the ground and to remove this top layer of sod, basically. You want to skim off that top layer. Depending on your type of grass, it might be 1 or 2 inches thick. You want to go down to where the roots of the grass are and just kind of take that whole section out. So you're basically taking strips of about 1 inch deep sod out of your growing area. When you are disposing of that sod, if you're not putting it somewhere else in your yard, because you can do that too, but if you want to dispose of it and you don't want it growing anywhere in your yard, what you do is you bury the pieces of sod upside down at the bottom of a new garden bed, or put it in your compost pile. If you're removing it and putting it in your compost pile, put 2 pieces grass side together, and then they're less likely to grow. If you're removing really bad weeds like Bermuda grass and stuff like that, maybe just throw them in the trash, because Some kind of plants are just so tenacious, they're going to come back no matter what. If the bed is large or especially weedy, you might want to kill the vegetation before you do this. So one of the ways you can kill vegetation, we've all done it. You ever grabbed a piece of wood off the ground and there's nothing growing underneath it because that piece of wood has basically smothered the grass? You can do something like that. You don't have to use wood. You can use a tarp. You can use old feed bags. You can have the dogs come running to say, hi, Tequila. You're such a good girl, and here's Whiskey. Good boy, Whiskey. And here's Vodka. Good boy, Vodka. Good dogs. So, that has nothing to do with anything. The dogs are just here. But you can use tarps or feed bags or pieces of wood or whatever you have to kind of lay in your garden bed area and just leave them there for, 5 to 6 weeks. By the time you lift them up, there won't be anything growing underneath. So you can do that as well. Another option, if you don't want to cut out the grass and weeds, and if you don't want to, where are the dogs going? Over there. But if you don't want to cut out the grass and weeds with your box shovel and you don't want to smother it, you don't want to smother them, your other option is herbicides. I don't like this. I prefer to either dig or smother. But you can use herbicides. If you are going to use herbicides, you're going to want to talk to your local garden center and find out what local herbicide is best to kill the plant you're trying to kill, the primary plant. Maybe it's grass, maybe it's poison ivy, maybe it's something else. Whatever it is, you're going to want to use the right herbicide, okay? Remember that if you're using one of those herbicides that's a non-specific herbicide, so it's kind of a all plants are going to die kind of herbicide, you've actually now also damaged the soil. So you're going to have to add aggregates and fertilizer in. I would rather remove the top layer of soil and add in new topsoil or new garden soil, or smother the plants and remove them, rather than use an herbicide that then means I have to rebalance my soil. I don't love doing that, but you can. You certainly can. If you are using an herbicide, especially a chemical one, please remember to use it exactly as the label specifies, including wearing protective clothing if you have to. Because herbicides can be toxic depending on what you're using. So be careful. You don't want to breathe it in. You don't want to get it on you. Follow the label directions. Okay? Be very, very, very sure to do that. It might take a week or more for the herbicide to work. You have to check the bottle. Check the container. It'll tell you how long it should take to work and what the method is. Do you have to dilute it? Don't just get started. Read the directions. Okay? It might also take several applications to kill all the vegetation. So yeah, you do want to read the directions carefully and make sure you follow them. So I don't love herbicides, but you can use them if you need to. So if you choose that route, just be careful. Make sure you know what you're using. Make sure you're using it appropriately. And oftentimes there's a wait time. So it'll tell you, now that you've done this, you can't plant anything there for 3 months or 2 months or whatever it says, depending on the fertilizer, the herbicide you're using. Sorry, not fertilizer. Fertilizer comes later. But make sure you're checking the bottle, because one of the worst things you can do is use an herbicide, not realize you can't use that soil for a few weeks, and then everything you plant dies because there's herbicide in the soil. So absolutely make sure that you're reading the directions. I've said that a few times, I know. But if you are using herbicides, also make sure that you protect nearby plants. So if I'm doing a garden bed right here, which I am going to do, but I don't want to kill my cute little wild daisies or the mint that I've got growing here, I've got to protect the daisies and the mint. You need to protect them from oversprays. Apply your herbicide on a windless day so that it doesn't blow all over. And use large sheets of cardboard or tarps to protect nearby plants. If you're applying it to weeds in an existing bed, so where you already have good stuff planted, you're going to need to apply your herbicide with a brush or a sponge just to avoid getting it on the stuff you don't want to eliminate. So absolutely make sure you read the bottle first, the container first. You don't want to go destroying all your stuff, plant stuff, and then have it die too. So I do prefer to smother. That is my chosen method. But digging it out works just as well. So get yourself a good box shovel. They're not super expensive. Get yourself a good box shovel. They can dig out pretty much anything. Okay, these guys have nice sharp tips, and you can really dig right down into the ground and remove that top layer of sod, bring in some fresh garden soil, and you're ready to roll. That is probably the fastest way, is just digging it out and getting going with a new load of soil. The slightly slower way is smothering, and the way I don't like is herbicides, but you can use that too. Use whatever method works best for you in the situation you're in, and depending on the plants you have to kill. Some are more tenacious than others. So if you're trying to get rid of certain types of clover, it'll really be a pain in the butt. Hey, Jake. So just make sure you have decided ahead of time what you're going to do, how you're going to tackle each plant, and exactly what shape your garden bed is going to be. Because you can't change your mind after. Well, you can, but it's annoying. You also might want to consider edging around the edges of your new garden bed, just to help prevent grass and weeds from getting back into your garden bed. Because you just spent all that time removing them, you don't want to have to go and start all over again. So do try to prevent new weeds and grasses from invading your brand new garden bed that you have just dug into the ground. But when in doubt, build your garden bed above the ground like these guys. It's just sometimes easier. Anyway, that is about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. This wasn't the highest quality video, mostly because I'm walking around the yard. But it's good enough. So decide where you want your garden bed, and then get started on getting rid of the grass and weeds that are in your way, because there are inevitably grass and weeds in your way. That's about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. We'll see you tomorrow.